Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katrina and this is Katrina Reads. I am doing a check-in on my TBR, but I also wanted to do a program change for myself. I had decided to do this TBR that had 10 points to make sure that I was reading a little bit more well-rounded, and also hold myself accountable because I had started to allow books to pile up while collecting other books, and I wasn't reading physically or ebook wise, like just reading with my eyeballs as much. And so those were some of the reasons why I wanted to actually join BookTube. I have found that a monthly TBR, especially with 10 requirements, even when I double and triple up sometimes, is still too strict for me. It's going to take the joy out of this for me. One, because I'm very much so a moody reader. Two, there's other things in the community that I want to be part of that can't be doubled and tripled up with, my to be read. I also have, a limited budget, and there's so many books that I want to kind of get. I'm in a mood, or things will happen such as this month where I will think that a book is going to be something and it turns out to not be that thing, and I'm wrecked and I need time to recover, and then I think that my cozy mystery is going to be my recovery, and then boom, it's not just a cozy mystery. It talks about the Holocaust. So this is going to go into being a quarterly TBR, and it's going to be the at least TBR, so that it allows me to have the freedom to be a moody reader like I am, to be the sensitive reader that I am. I'm very sensitive, and to also read the books that I want to read when they come across my BookTube feed, or when I'm looking at somebody's Goodreads, or I just happen to be scrolling through Kindle and I see something I want to read, or I happen to go through my library of books and think, oh, I'm in the mood for this, I'm going to do this. So with those changes, let me give you an update on what I have done, and then maybe how things will kind of go from here on out. So far this month, I have read Lakewood. I have a whole quick bites on that. I just did a quick 5-minute quick bites on that here on the channel. I have not figured out the cards yet. I don't know what the problem is. It took me a long time to figure out where the thumbnails was, and I still can't figure out how to do the cards. So my channel isn't that big yet. And it was one of the more recent videos, so you can find it on my channel. And it's under Lakewood. It has a nice bright purple thumbnail. So I gave that 3 stars. I read Ballad of Black Tom, and I think I did a full review on that one. That's also here on the channel. That had 5 stars. So those are 2 of the 4 books that I needed to read for Blackathon. I read The Ballad of Black Tom in time for Buzzwordathon, which again, like I said, was the prompt was colors. I needed a break mentally. After those 2 books, they were powerful in different ways. Lakewood just reminded me, it didn't have as much of an emotional punch as The Ballad of Black Tom, but they both still reminded me of how Black people are treated in this country. And, that plus the news plus other books that I'm reading, it packed a punch. So I read a nice little cozy mystery called Rude Awakening, which had a little more of an interesting premise behind it. I am so used to just zoning out while they're playing, but I have paid a little bit more attention to this one. Rude Awakening, the book opens with her getting engaged to this man and having a little girl, and then like the next chapter, I think someone woke her up on a New York bench, and she's like, oh, did I go out on a party? Oh, I partied too hard. I haven't partied like this, and oh, I'm so embarrassed. Like, I'm waking up on the bench. And she has completely forgotten 15 years of her life. and that's where the mystery starts. And I was just like, that was a little bit more of a deep and interesting premise for a cozy mystery, and it still had everything that I wanted. There was still a fancy chocolate shop, there were quirky people all around, there's a mystery, there's murder, all of that, but it just still had a little bit more like, this is something I could see this being made into some type of, you know, HBO show where Nicole Kidman is the woman that's waking up on the bench in New York with 15 years of her life just completely swept away. I can totally see it with the perfect coats and everything, just like she was in The Undoing. I can totally see it. I read the perfect little black girl magic book of all time, Amari and the Night Brothers. 5 stars, magical. This little girl was not perfect. She had doubts, she had flaws, she had to depend on other people, so there was no burgeoning, strong black woman, I can do it all by myself, independence narrative there. She had to learn the power of friendship and working with other people. She was betrayed. There was black issues. There was no leaving out the blackness, but there wasn't this oppressive, woe is me, Negro spiritualness in it. It was such a magical, wonderful book. I want to see it on screen. I want my daughter to read it. I'm going to buy this. I listened to it. I'm going to buy it. That I'm starting to write on a list that I'm going to purchase and have in the library for the kids to read. And the latest 2 that I've read was Legendborn and Amari and the Night Brothers. Perfect books, both of them. Perfect books. And I might buy a copy for them and a copy for myself, because my daughter will read a book and read a book and read a book until it's completely, you know, torn apart, and I want to keep a copy for myself. And Amari and the Night Brothers is a middle grade book, and yes, I'm gonna buy a copy for myself. I also have some finished arcs, and I review all of the arcs, and you can find those reviews on my Goodreads, and you can find where my Goodreads is in my link tree down in the description box. The first one I finished was Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry. So this is a young adult book about a little girl, not a little girl, she's a young adult. She's a teenager. Her name is Quinn. She's black. She is from an upper middle class family, and she has to do a project with this boy who she thinks is handsome, and he's from the other side of the tracks. She also has a grandmother who's going through dementia. She's dealing with racially tinged things and is afraid to kind of call it out. The premise begins with the fact that she writes everything down in a journal, and she writes lots of lists throughout the whole book. And one of the things that she writes in the list is that she wants to kiss this boy from the other side of the tracks. So then they have to go to Quinn's house, and then they accidentally switch notebooks. And that's where all the shenanigans begin. One of the things I really liked about this book was the fact that different types of blackness was handled in this book. It made clear that blackness is not a monolith, that rich black people, upper middle class black people, you know, working class black people, mixed kids, dark skinned kids, like everybody, we all have different issues. We all have different approaches to blackness. We all experience blackness through different prisms. And I just loved that this book approached that without yelling about it, without announcing it, without being really proud of itself. It just happened, and I just happened to notice it as I was writing out the review. Actually, I didn't even notice it while I was reading it. I just was writing out things and thinking about the different people that she comes in contact with, and I'm just like, wait a minute, yeah, she did. And so this author, Leah Goffney, did that really well. And I really love the cover. I am a sucker for these cartoon covers right now, and this was a 4 out of 5 star for me. Premeditation is a book that people who like Jane Austen would love, and who like thrillers and murder. It is not like Pride and Prejudice, you know, and zombies, or whichever one that was. So let me read the book description. Perfect for fans of the Lady Janeys and Stalking Jack the Ripper, the first book of the Jane Austen murder mystery series is a clever retelling of Pride and Prejudice and reimagines the iconic settings, characters, and romances in a thrilling and high-stakes whodunit. Lizzie Bennet is an aspiring young lawyer, and she is working around a lot of the issues that she has with being a woman in her time. It's kind of a story as old as time now, where a woman, it's a modern story as old as time now, where a woman feels trapped by her station in life and, you know, is dealing with that while also trying to use the men in her life and, you know, all these other different things to try to get across what she knows about this murder and get someone to accept the outcome of her investigation and stuff like that. So it was really interesting. I don't worship at the feet of Jane Austen. And so for me, it was a 3-star. But I imagine that for someone who loves retellings like this, it says it, and I don't remember a lot of romance. There was a Mr. Darcy in the book, and he was reimagined, obviously, but I, again, need to not have these books on such a high speed when I'm going to do a review for them, because I missed any kind of romance, really. I know that there should be romance between Mr. Darcy, just because I've watched the BBC, you know, retellings, and, you know, Bridget Jones's Diary is my entryway into it, and I loved that when it was out. I don't think I've ever actually sat down and read any Jane Austen. I only know it because it's just in our collective knowledge. I was in AP English, and I don't even think we had to read those. Like, I read Middlemarch. And I don't think we read Pride and Prejudice. So that's, again, you can find that in my Goodreads review, and you can also find out a little bit more about the book based on the book description there. Blah. There was another children's middle grade, like young middle grade chapter book, very short chapter book, called Am I Weird? And at first I was a little put off by the illustrations, and the writing wasn't the best, but the story is great. The story is great in this one and the other one that I read by the same author for NetGalley, Am I Losing My BFF and Am I Weird? And they really do, while the writing isn't peak, and in this season of peak young adult writing and peak middle grade books, this was a simple enough book that brought me back to when I was younger, and Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, and stuff like that. It's in kind of that vein where this little girl is very much so in her own mind, and there's a lot of repetition, and you can empathize with her feeling weird and left out, with her questioning why all of a sudden she can't talk to her, why her responses to her group of friends is not taken the same way it used to be taken, why she's starting to be left out of the conversation. It's just the group seems to be moving on without her. That's the BFF one, and the Am I Weird one is that way as well, because it's like, I like painting and I don't want to dress like that, and I had this knee-jerk reaction where I thought, okay, is this going to be one of those books where I'm not like the other girls? But it wasn't. It wasn't that way. It was this girl coming more into who she was, and that was a little different from her original group, and they've known each other since they were little girls. And so this other set of girls, she's a little bit more creative, a little bit more artistic, and so she doesn't think so much about, she's not as fastidious about her clothes as the other girls are, because she's an artist and her mind is more on painting, and so she'll have paint on her clothes, and she doesn't think about it. She'll wear those overalls that have paint that won't come off, whereas those girls have the matching, track suits and newest gym shoes and stuff. And it doesn't come off as, I'm not like those other girls. I'm creative, I'm in my brain, but this is still my friend since I was 4 years old. What am I doing wrong? And it also encourages her, it also encourages teens, the books encourages teens through this character to talk to your parents when you're having these issues. Both books did that. Am I Losing My BFF and Am I Weird? Or I'm Losing My BFF. I'll put them both up so you can see the covers. And then also it encourages communication with the friends in question, and the story doesn't wrap up neatly. The girl doesn't all of a sudden continue on fitting in with that group. She finds strength in being who she is, and that's a wonderful message. So while the illustrations are weird and the writing is a little simplistic and off a little bit, it was an important lesson for kids, and I gave it a 4-star because of that. Murder at Mabel's Hotel is another one of these cozy mysteries. It was, again, an arc through NetGalley. It was an audiobook. This one had a finished narrator. It had an actual narrator instead of the computer voice. I gave this one 4 stars because it rose above the typical cozy mystery because, first of all, there was a lot going on, and it wasn't too much, but it was just a lot going on that made for a very rich story. Now, this is book 3 in like a prequel series from what I understand, and there's a full-on series from one of the grandchildren of this granny murder mystery kind of book. So that might be why there's so much fullness and richness, because this author is fully ensconced in this world already, and so we feel that as we're reading it. A third book in a prequel series. There's this it's a little town, and the grandmother and the sheriff are kind of sweet on each other, and because of that, that's her entryway into this investigation of a murder of a young Hispanic man. And there's the dotty old lady who lives in a mansion with a bunch of cats. The grandmother has, her son is a ne'er-do-well who is on the road and doesn't want to have anything to do with the kids. And the grandmother's daughter-in-law is in jail, and she is raising their 7 kids, and there's an 8th on the way. Then there's like a neo-Nazi gang going around, and then there's the typical red herrings, and then there's a big surprise and a really interesting, surprisingly moving, surprisingly deep and historic end to the story. And I was just like, did this cozy mystery just rise above with a granny and 8 kids? And like, it was great. It was great. And I think that the only reason why I didn't give it 5 stars is because I didn't get into it until the half. Like, it just did not catch my attention the first half. It just went way over my head. Maybe it was my mind frame. I don't know, but it didn't catch my attention. But that second half was great. And she's a woman of faith, but her faith wasn't sickening sweet, you know? She wrestled with her faith. When one of her grandchildren are in the hospital and going through something, she, you know, sees herself as a woman who is kind and prays for her son, the ne'er-do-well son, you know, the deadbeat baby daddy. And she's like, she calls him up and tries to guilt him into coming and caring about his kids. You know, she goes off on them, and there's a temporary change, but not a full-on change, and she has to wrestle with that, and she has to wrestle with her faith when it comes to the surprise at the end as well. And so that's interesting. I don't know if these are particularly advertised as clean or Christian books, but if they are, and I just happened to read it, like, it was not the way I have read like evangelical books. I think she's a granny. I think these stories took place in the 80s. A southern granny in the 80s or 90s is going to be religious, and she wasn't stereotypical. It was done really well. So it got 4 stars from me, and the only the only other thing that took away from it was that the narrator grated on me. The southern accent, the granny voice grated on me. The voice she used for everyone else grated on me. And oddly enough, her voice was right on, I think, for the sheriff. And I think maybe this was a British person doing a southern accent, so that seemed to come through. And so maybe that was throwing me off. This is all conjecture. I don't know. And last but not least, I finished my reread of The Bluest Eye, and there's lots of tabs, and I finished it last night and ugly cried for a good half hour. And I even like questioned the purpose of continuing to be hurt like this. And my husband was just kept saying the same thing, just like, you don't have to, you finished this, so now just, read whatever you want and take a break, and there's still value in, and it just hurts so bad. It hurt so bad. And she writes so beautifully. She writes the ugliness. She writes about the ugliness and the horror and the terror of being Black in this country so beautifully and so unmatched. She's unmatched, and that makes it worse. It's beautiful, but then I keep thinking, I know this stuff. I've lived this stuff. Why do I have to keep hurting like this? Why is it important for me to continue to hurt this way? White people need to take this on. They need to take on the Toni Morrison project. Read what she had to say, how she approaches Blackness. Read the anger of James Baldwin. You read the hopeful, beautiful, soaring, and then depressed arc, that an unsure arc that Martin Luther King went on. You read the up and downs and the changes of heart that Malcolm X went through. You read about the truth of Abraham Lincoln and how he said that there has to be a superior and inferior, and that Blacks were inferior, and that he wanted us out of the country. He didn't want us to be here. You read about that truth. I know it. And so I keep trying to find a reason. And it's so funny because my therapist deals with me with this, because I want to shrink away from pain. I don't want to deal with it. And she always says certain things such as, you'll be stronger. But I'm like, what if I don't want to be strong? I don't want to be any stronger than I am right now. Just let me be. I don't need to be any stronger. Like, I don't want to know anymore. I don't want to feel any more of this pain. So that's my tiny short review of this. We will talk more about the knife that is Toni Morrison. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that right now. And so far, what I've learned and the changes that I'm making based on what I've learned and the accountability portion of this video is that this TBR list is needed to push me more so to physically read and to slow down when it comes to important things and things I'm going to review. I don't need, and in that vein, I don't need to go over probably 1.5 speed when I'm reading a book that I am going to review. And I want to allow for my moody reading and for books that hit me harder than what I thought they were going to do, or things that I just want to get to so that I can continue to have that joy of reading. I want to go ahead and go to a quarterly, at least to be read list. And so if you made it to the end of this video, please give me a black heart for Black History Month and Valentine's Day. And thank you for supporting my channel by giving me a like and a subscribe. Be easy on yourself, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.